Michael's back. All right. That's right. Michael Caruso from TheGamer is back with another stupid Pokemon list article. This time, it's the 10 weirdest water type Pokemon. So, if you've seen any of my past TheGamer articles, you know the staples that are just going to be riddled throughout this entire thing. Him complaining about Game Freak not explaining themselves, Pokemon being weird just because they're weird, so that makes them weird because he thinks they're weird, not understanding what the Pokemon actually is, and then complaining about their biology, even though real world counterparts of them exist. But all of that being said, this is still a fantastic list that I need to read to you. So, again, Pokemon, the 10 weirdest water types. There are some pretty interesting water-type Pokemon designs out there, but these will make you look twice. Water-type Pokemon have been present in the series since the very beginning in Gen 1. They're one of the types that most Pokemon fans are aware of. I would wager a bet. If anyone claimed to be a Pokemon fan, the only type I could argue them maybe not knowing about would be Fairy, due to its relatively recent entry into the series. You can still be a massive Pokemon fan, but stop after Gen 4 or 5, so you might not be super aware of more recent stuff, so Fairy might not be on your radar, but I would assume a Pokemon fan would at least be aware of the other 17 types. This is one of those situations where, like, you could have just said nothing and you'd be more right. Like, I don't know. Or you could have said, this is one of the types that many Pokemon fans like, or use in their journey or something like that, but I don't know. If in fact the rest of the sentence would have made more sense. Let me just read it as if to switch out for what I said. They're one of the types that most Pokemon fans use during their journey, and that is because players get to choose a starter at the beginning of every Pokemon game, and a water type is one of them. Are you implying, because of that second part, are you implying that most Pokemon fans only know about fire, grass, and water? That's all they know? That's weird. With all the different water type design in the Pokemon franchise that have been introduced over the past few decades, there are many that fans consider to be quite unusual compared to the average Pokemon. These aquatic creatures are some of the weirdest that the franchise has to offer, and fans are quite weirded out whenever they look at them. So just like every other time when I make articles, videos like this, from here on, if ever he says the word fan, I will switch it out for Michael and then change the grammar from there, because there is literally only one, arguably two Pokemon on this entire list that I would argue is weird. The second one is weird on purpose. But there is definitely one that I actively dislike because of how weird and bad the design is. But saying that fans as an entirety get quite weirded out when they look at all of them seems like it's just a Michael issue. So, like, some of these Pokemon, everyone seems to unanimously like, but then Michael's over here saying they're weird. So, yeah, I'll switch the word fans out for Michael. It'll make more sense later on. So, starting off with number 10, Huntail. A lot of fans, I'll actually, not for this specific instance, I won't switch it out, but I'll explain why in a second. A lot of fans don't even know that Huntail exists because it is a very peculiar Pokemon and one of the two evolutions of Clamperl and Hoenn. Okay, so if you are a Pokemon fan, even if you were a fan of the Hoenn games and you didn't know that Huntail exists, I honestly wouldn't judge you for that. Huntail and Gorbis, honestly, are in a very weird position because no major trainer uses them. Even though in Emerald there are two water-based bosses with one and the the 8th gym leader, and then Wallace in the Elite Four. Not to mention, the entirety of Team Aqua just not using any of the Clan Pearl line. There's two major bosses that just have water types, but don't use Huntail or Gorbis, despite them overlapping in what Pokemon they use. Like, they both use Whiscash, and then one also uses a lot of this other Pokemon that are in the Elite Four, like Crawdon and Celio. It's a little weird that one didn't have either Huntail or Gorbis, but whatever. If you're just playing through the game and I don't even know if there's any trainers. There might be a couple of trainers either in the abandoned ship or on the water routes past Mossdeep that have one or both of them. But if you didn't fight every trainer and you didn't know how to you didn't know how to evolve Clamperl, I wouldn't put it past you not know that Huntail exists. Because the way Huntail evolves is that you need to get the Deep Sea Tooth from Professor Stern, or Dr. Stern, whatever. In order to get the Deep Sea Tooth from Stern, you have to get the scanner item from the abandoned ship. In order to get to the abandoned ship, you have to surf either east of Dewford or kind of southwest of Slateport in order to get to the abandoned ship. Then, once you get there, you have to fight a bunch of trainers and get all these special keys hidden throughout in order to get to the final room. In order to get to the last key that matters, you have to know Dive. So you can't actually get Huntail or Gorbis. If I'm not mistaken, it might just be for the TM Ice Beam, or there's definitely some very important item in the abandoned ship that you need to use Dive for. The scanner might be accessible as soon as you get Surf, but that's still the 5th gym. So at least by the end of the 5th gym, and I think it's you have to beat the 7th gym, but let's just even assume it's just the 5th gym. No, it is. Crap. Actually, yeah, it would be regardless of whether or not you can get the scanner before or after you get Dive. You need to be able to use Dive in order to get a Clan Pearl in the first place. So you need to at least beat the 7th gym. Then get yourself a Clan Pearl, and then trade the scanner for either the Deep Sea Tooth or the Deep Sea Scale. And then once you go through all of that, you then need to trade Clan Pearl holding either Deep Sea item in order to evolve it into a Huntail or Gorbis. Keep in mind, these Pokemon aren't the best. They're like, I think they have base 470 something. Maybe it's like fine, but not that great considering all the hassle that you have to go through, and they're basically forced late game Pokemon, despite them being okay. So, considering you have to go through all of that, and even if you did go to the abandoned ship and you got the scanner, you might not know what to do with it. You wouldn't think to go back to Slateport and talk to Stern again. Like, you probably wouldn't do that unless maybe in Emerald he calls you asking for it, but I don't even think that happens. So unless you had a guide, I don't think you would even know how to access Huntail. So all that being said, even if you were a huge Gen 3 fan, I wouldn't put it past you not know that Huntail exists. Anyway, moving on. When fans do initially find this Pokemon in the wild, to my knowledge, unless there's some kind of weird event or something in a more recent Pokemon game that I'm not aware of, I don't think you can actually catch Huntail or Gorbis. I think you can only evolve. I could be very wrong about that. But regardless, in Gen 3, you cannot get Huntail in the wild. You can't fish or dive for it. So, you should just say when fans do initially discover Huntail. That would have been more general. You can either discover it in the wild or discover it by trading it. They will be dumbfounded by how weird it looks, and the odd facial expression it always sports. Eels look like that? Yeah, eels always have their mouth open like that. It's not that weird for a fish to look weird like that. I don't know. Huntail is a very cool Pokemon in general, and it is quite powerful in terms of stats. You didn't need to say in terms of stats. You could have just said quite powerful, period. Or quite powerful if used right, because Shell Smash, Huntail, and Gorbis can be very potent. Otherwise, Michael just thinks it's a weird creature. So, from the jump, he uses the example of this Pokemon is weird because I think it's weird. Isn't that weird, guys? His only argument is that it has a weird face, which is very subjective. Which, I mean, that honestly looks less weird than most real life animals that live in the sea. So, yeah, it's arguably one of the weirder designs from Gen 3, but like that doesn't make it inherently a weird looking Pokemon. I don't know. You maybe could have had a strong argument if you kind of broke down every single aspect of it, like the fact that it has like a weird looking fish on its tail, this weird head fan thing. Like there are some aspects of it that could be considered weird, but you just talked about its mouth. I don't know. That doesn't seem strong enough when you actually have a case for it being actually being kind of weird. Anyway, moving on. Number 9, Inteleon. Inteleon seems to be themed around a spy, and that doesn't make a lot of sense for a Pokemon. Oh yeah, because Pokemon are never based on things. Not even once. Inteleon is taking on human traits that it shouldn't be able to because it isn't a human, and Michael believes that to be one of the weirdest things that have ever happened to Pokemon. Yes, not once in the history of Pokemon has a single Pokemon ever seemed to emulate human traits. Throw and Sock straight up have like black belts and a gi on. Where'd they get those from? Did they just evolve to kind of create those? Did they steal them from somebody? Why do they have those? I don't know. The Timber line seemed to work on construction sites. Why do Pokemon work on construction sites? That's a human job. See where I'm going with this? Like, there have been Pokemon in the past that take on human traits. Did the starters in Gen 8 kind of go a little overboard with that? Maybe a little bit. Like, Cinderace just is a soccer player, and almost guarantee if he makes a fire version of this list, Cinderace is going to be on there. And Rillaboom, like, is someone on a guitar. Like, it's a little forced, maybe, but, like, that doesn't necessarily make it weird. That just, it's a theme they went with for all three of them to have more human elements, and I think that's fine. Inteleon also holds a sniper rifle when Gigantamax, adding to its weird personality and design. I mean, it has the ability Sniper. Its signature ability is called Snipe Shot, so it would be kind of weird if Gigantamax form didn't, take that to its logical extreme. Here's the sentence right here that made me really want to make this list. Hopefully, future water-type Pokemon won't have as much personality as this creature, because although it can seem cool initially, Michael finds that it is very weird quickly after catching it. There's a lot to break down in this one sentence. You hope that water-type Pokemon in the future won't have much personality? What is that supposed to mean? It'd be one thing to say you hope that Pokemon in the future won't take on human traits. If you think that's so weird, that's fine. But you specifically say you hope they won't have any personality. Pokemon, by definition, have large amounts of personality. It's kind of like, why even be a Pokemon if you're not going to like have exaggerated traits and have personality that like makes them unique? I don't know. That seems odd to complain about. But then the second half, Michael finds it weird. Michael finds that it is very weird quickly after catching it. To my knowledge, unless there's a Dynamax raid battle that I'm not aware of, I don't think you can actually catch Inteleon. Again, I could be wrong. There could be max raids currently going on that I'm not aware of, but you can't catch Inteleon. You get Sobble as a starter Pokemon, but you don't catch it. It's just given to you. So you can't even say that about Sobble. Inteleon should stick to being a Pokemon and not try to copy human behavior, because that is very strange. Again, it's weird because I think it's weird. Isn't that weird? Yeah, okay. The next one is also one that it just boggles my mind how this made it in. Like, there are so many Pokemon that are so weird. Like, Luvdisc isn't on this list. It's a heart-shaped fish thing. And then, Stunfisk isn't even water type. Alola-Mola. Yeah, Alola-Mola looks exactly like Luvdisc, even though they're not related. That is weird. That is objectively weird. Looking at Alola-Mola, looking at, like, it is a pink heart-shaped fish, but that is not the evolved form or connected at all to Luvdisc. That is objectively very weird, but they're not on this list. But Blastoise, of all things, is. Blastoise. I'm not going to say that starter Pokemon aren't immune, which he actually uses that exact phrase, but I feel like Blastoise, on any given day, but like if you were to ask me who's my favorite Gen 1 starter Final Evolution, it's easily a coin flip between either Blastoise or Charizard. They both look equally cool to me. But let's see what he has to say. A lot of fans love Blastoise because it was one of the first starter creatures to be catchable in the Pokemon franchise. The only starter Pokemon, to my knowledge, that was ever shown to be caught was Pikachu in Yellow. All the other starter Pokemon were given to you by Professor Oak. Aside from in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, you can find other starter Pokemon in the wild. I think you can catch Charizard, but you can't catch the final evolution of the other two, but you can catch Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander in the wild. They're very rare, but you can catch them. So I'll give you that, but Blastoise himself cannot be caught. The starter Pokemon itself is not caught. However, that doesn't mean that Blastoise is immune from criticism of being such a weird creature in design. This sentence right here, I can't understand. I cannot understand how this got past the editing process. Blastoise has cannons coming out of its back that can shoot water very quickly, similar to a gun. Let me read that again with having Blastoise in frame here. Blastoise has cannons coming out of its back that can shoot water very quickly, similar to a gun. Or maybe Blastoise has cannons coming out of its back that shoot water similar to a cannon, or similar to a tank, since that would be more applicable. But no, he said gun. That you already had the cannon. You already said the word cannon earlier, so we already had the visual in our head. You didn't need to then qualify it further by saying similar to a gun when we already have the idea of, oh, it's like a cannonball shooting out, but it's water instead. Like, what do you, like a super soaker? Like, what? I don't understand. Again, if he had said similar to a tank, that would actually then follow into his next sentence a little better. But no, he said similar to a gun. That's weird to me. I don't understand how he wrote that and thought he needed to qualify it further by saying like a gun. That's weird. Anyway, Blastoise has gone down as one of the weirdest starters in the franchise, and that makes sense considering its weird tank-like biology. Literally, the only thing he says about Blastoise is that it has cannons coming out of its back, and that makes it weird, apparently. And everyone around him agrees that Blastoise is weird, according to him. Gone down as one of the weirdest stars in the franchise. Has he not seen Chestnut? Chestnut is a weird looking Pokemon. Like I I can't understand. You need more than just he has cannons and that makes him weird. He would have had a much, much stronger argument if he said that War Turtle didn't look like it evolved into Blastoise. Literally, the only problem I have with the Squirtle line, I love Squirtle. It's probably my favorite Gen 1 starter Pokemon. I love Blastoise. It's at least tied for my favorite final evolution. But War Turtle just doesn't look like it belongs in this line. I could easily see Squirtle into War Turtle. I could easily see Squirtle into Blastoise, but I don't see War Turtle into Blastoise. The ears are way different. The tail is way different. Just the general structure of his body just doesn't look like it's an evolution, pun intended, of of War Turtle. Like, and I know this is mainly because originally the Pokemon that Blastoise replaced did look like just a bigger version of War Turtle, and Blastoise was a completely separate design in the beta form. But then they decided later on that they just kind of fused them together, which I'm fine with. But they should have also then fixed War Turtle to, like, I don't know, have one cannon or hold a gun, or at least have some kind of through line between Squirtle into a tortoise tank. You could have actually had a fairly strong argument there, but you just didn't go for it, and instead just says he has cannons, and that makes him weird, and everyone agrees with me when they don't. That's honestly the problem with this entire list. Almost all of them on this list, he actually has a very strong argument for. If you were to make an argument for them, I wouldn't necessarily agree, but I could hear an argument for a lot of these Pokemon. But he just doesn't go all the way and instead just makes himself look like a fool. But whatever. Next up, Slowking. Slowking is a unique Pokemon, and many fans praised it for its creative design. Okay, I like Slowking a lot. I personally think it's a better design than Slowbro, maybe because of this like neck frill thing. I really like that. It makes him look more regal. But arguably speaking, actually technically speaking, Slowking is one of the least creative designs of Gen 2 because it's essentially just Slowbro, but the shelter thing is on a different part of his body. It has other elements to it, but there are way more Gen 2 Pokemon that are technically more creative than Slowking. So that's a very weird thing to say that all fans agree that that's a super creative design. I don't know. That's a little weird. I really like his design. I like how it's not literally just the Slowbro tail on his head. They made it look more like a crown with a gem on his head. I like that a lot. But I wouldn't call it the most creative design ever. But anyway. Slowking also happens to be a powerful Pokemon because of its secondary Psychic typing that allows it to use powerful mental attacks to take down any enemy that stands in its way. Slowking also happens to have a weird crown that controls all of its thoughts and actions, which makes fans wonder if the initial Slowpoke is even in control anymore. So, arguably, Slowpoke wasn't ever even in control of its own body, considering it got amnesia every 5 minutes or something like that. Like, it literally couldn't remember what it was doing two steps ago. So, arguably, Slowpoke isn't even in control of its body. Like, if anything, the the shelter, clamping onto its head, releasing the endorphins, kind of causes it to be more in control of its own body, and the psychic power just kind of takes over him. But whatever. Michael considers this parasitic Pokemon to be a breath of fresh air in design, but also very unusual. You didn't make any points. There was no meat to that argument at all. It was just some fans wonder if Slowpoke is even in control anymore when this is a Slow King now, so I know the relationship between Slowpoke and Shelter is a parasitic thing, but it's a Slow King now. It literally evolved into a new Pokemon. So Slowpoke not existing, not being in control anymore is irrelevant because Slow King is in control. They're one symbiotic Pokemon now. So it's not that weird. But then you kind of praise Slowking for being creative, but his creativity makes him a weird Pokemon? That doesn't make sense. You have to actually have arguments. You can't just say it's creative and that makes him weird. There was a couple on the grass list too that were like that. I don't know, that I know that the gamer articles never have any effort put into them at all, but maybe they should. Maybe they at least could. Please. Vaporeon. Vaporeon is the weirdest evolution because it seems to have gained gills after evolving. Oh yeah, because a Pokemon that is given a water stone gaining aquatic elements to its design is super weird. It's not. It's really not. Especially since Eevee is supposed to be it's supposed to have the potential to evolve into literally, or change its form into literally any other type. It's not weird at all that a water stone would give it aquatic elements like gills and a fin. That makes complete sense. It's not weird at all. Okay. The fact that this Pokemon gains gills after evolving makes almost no sense, and it was originally supposed to be based on a dog, which makes its design even stranger. Yeah, Eevee, sure, was a dog, bunny, cat thing. It's just kind of an amalgamation of all small mammals. But, that's the point of evolution. Literal, real-world evolution has things changing and other things over time. So having a water stone being given to Eevee just expedited that process, and if Eevee were to be thrown into the water and just decided, it wanted to live there, eventually over time, its molecular structure would literally evolve in the literal sense into growing gills. That just kind of makes sense, especially given the biology of how Eevee works in the first place. Vaporeon is a cute Pokemon, and fans have loved it ever since Gen 1. But there's no denying that it is a weird creature with a design that asks more questions than answers. It really doesn't. I'm just going to leave it there. Eevee evolving into any of the different types makes complete sense, and then gaining new elements of those types makes complete sense. Moving on. Barbaracle. I do not like this Pokemon. It is a badly designed Pokemon. It is a weird Pokemon. Objectively so. I have no issue with Barbaracle specifically being on this list. It has weird eyes on all of its hands. Its head is a fist. Why? Why is that a thing? If the head fist were gone and each individual hand had a face on it, I think that would have. I feel like I would have been more okay with that. Or if at least the middle fist had a little bit of the barnacle sprouting out of it as a neck, I think I would have been more fine with it. But just the way it looks right now, it's so weird. How are you punching with your head? That doesn't. it just looks unfinished, kind of. I don't know. And then the weird eyes on the other hand, like it is a bizarre design. So I have no issue with it being on this list. But his arguments, or should I say lack thereof, despite it actually being a ridiculously looking Pokemon, his arguments are non-existent. It's so weird. So let's read this. Barbarico can be seen in Generation 6, and it is one of the most creative designs to ever come out of the water typing to date. Again, he's just like praising it. You actually have a decent argument for a Pokemon being weird, and then you decide to praise it? That's so weird. Especially for this, which is actually a badly designed Pokemon in my opinion. I don't say that about many Pokemon. Of the 900-ish, I think there's like 890 something Pokemon out there, there's probably about 20, if not even fewer than that, maybe 30 max. 30 max Pokemon that I would look at that and say that is a badly designed Pokemon for one reason or another. And Barbarical is one of them. But even though you actually have a good example of a weird-looking Pokemon, you decide to praise it. Moving on. Even still, this Pokemon isn't known for having the most basic design. And it doesn't seem to be directly based off of any kind of real-world organism other than a barnacle. Again, with him complaining about it being based on one thing, when A is based on a couple, it's at least based on a barnacle stuck to a rock, so it's at least two things. But then also you complained in the last list about Tropius being based on too many things, so like, what do you want? I don't understand. Its claws are also very sharp and add to this Pokemon's strange design. Are you not going to touch on the fact that it has eyes on all of its hands? That's weird. No, you're not? Okay. Barbarical is humanoid and has 4 arms that help it defeat opponents swiftly. Hopefully, more Pokemon like Barbarical will be introduced in the future because it is very creative. However, that doesn't make it a Pokemon that makes much sense. You want more things like this? You want more Pokemon with fists for faces? That boggles me. You have a perfectly good Pokemon to actually complain about how weird it is, and then you just praise it for being creative. But then you say its creativity makes it weird? So I can't understand what you want. It's actually very simplistic in what it's based on, but then you say it's very creative, and that makes it weird. I can't understand. I can't understand, Michael. I want to understand, but I just can't. Moving on. Corphish. This one was fun. Corphish was an important Pokemon in the Gen 3 anime because Ash owned one as his main water type in the Hoenn region. Although Corphish was a popular Pokemon, a lot of Michaels regarded it as a very weird-looking one, and also its personality seemed to be peculiar. Again, with him complaining about a Pokemon with personality? Like, do you want Pokemon to just be fighting all the time and have no personality at all? What's the fun in that? Corphish has pincers that can easily defeat most other types of wild Pokemon, and it is always seen as a Pokemon with a personality that can be described at best as strange. You're not going to go into why or how it's strange, you're just going to say that it's strange and move on? Of course the anime is going to make Corphish have a unique personality. It's one of Ash's main Pokemon. It's not just going to be like super stoic and serious all the time. That will be boring. There's usually one Pokemon on Ash's team every gen that is like that. But if every Pokemon was so boring like that, well, that'd be boring. So I liked Corphish's personality. It wasn't strange at all. Luckily, Corphish does evolve into a more serious-looking Pokemon that fans have come to love and catch. Sure, whatever. You just don't understand Corphish. It's not even that. It's honestly another one of those Pokemon that's just like, take a Crawdad or take a Crayfish and just like make that a Pokemon. That's kind of what this is, similar to Carnivine and Sunflora and the last list. Just take what they're based on, turn that into a Pokemon, just like paint it a color, but like that's pretty much all this is. It's not that weird. The design, personality, all of it, it's fine. It's fine. What's weird is that no one in Team Aqua uses Corphish or Crawdon. That is weird. But that's a different discussion entirely. Milotic, another Pokemon he just doesn't understand. Milotic isn't a weird Pokemon by itself. Then why is it on this list? He's going to talk about Feebas in a second, but why is Milotic specifically the one on this list if it's not Milotic that you think is weird? But what makes it so peculiar is the fact that it evolves from one of the ugliest creatures in the series. So clearly Michael's mom didn't read enough to him as a kid, because clearly he's never heard the tale of the ugly duckling. You know, the duckling that was deemed ugly by his other duck friends, so he got all depressed and then, like, eventually transformed into a beautiful swan, so he impressed all of his other duck friends. That's what this is supposed to be. Feebas is an ugly fish that evolves into a beautiful Pokemon, very reminiscent of the ugly duckling. Did you just ignore that? Do you not know that tale exists? It's not uncommon for Pokemon to be based on either mythology or stories of any kind, really. So it's not weird for a Pokemon to be thematically themed off of the ugly duckling. Milotic is known as the beautiful Pokemon, and because of its appearance, fans don't find this surprising upon learning it. Feebas is the pre-evolution of Milotic, and Michael dislikes it strongly because it is an ugly fish with no colors other than light brown. The fact that Milotic evolved from this Pokemon is absolutely shocking, and most Michaels are surprised when they find the fact out. Okay, this is another example where you actually would have had a strong argument for this specific Pokemon being weird. Feebas, it's always boggled my mind why they made it so stupidly hard to get Feebas. In Gen 3, I believe it is either Route 118 or Route 119, whichever the one is right before Fortree City. On that route, I think it's 118. I'll say 118. On that route, on the river within that route, every single day, there is 6 tiles. 6 random tiles. They might be connected in some formation, but regardless, there are 6 tiles along that water route where it is possible to catch Feebas. And every single day, that where those 6 tiles are located shifts around. So you never actually know where Feebas can be caught. You know it is somewhere on this water route, but you just don't know where. It's not even a guarantee that in this tile you will get a Feebas. It's like, I think it's less than 20%. I think it's only like 5 or 10 max percent to get a Feebas on that in that specific tile. So even if you have the right tile, you could fish for an hour and theoretically not even get one, and then move on to a different tile and then just waste your entire day away because Feebas is hard to get even if you have the right tile. That alone is weird. But then, in order to evolve it, you have to feed it Pokeblocks to max out his beauty stat, at least in Gen 3 and 4. To max out his beauty stat, and then, I think, level it up to evolve it. That is weird. In Gen 5 onward, they had... Maybe they changed it back for Mega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. But for Gen 5 on, I think it's the Prism scale. You trade it with that and it evolves just fine. But it's still hard to get in those games too. That is weird. It is very weird that they decided that Feebas, of all things, to be the one to this new Pokemon Feebas to be the one to be so hard to catch. If it only had a 5% chance on that route, that'd be one thing. But like, it's only 6 individual tiles every single day changing. That is bizarre. So you actually had a decent argument for Feebas being weird. Milotic is not weird because of what it's based on. Cloyster. Yep. Because oysters don't exist. How does this clam in real life work? I don't understand it. That's what this is going to be. So let's read. Cloyster has both a weird appearance and a smirk on its face that shows it is very cocky when going into a Pokemon battle. Cloyster is the evolution of Shelter, and it is a water-ice type Pokemon. Shelter is seen as nothing more than a black ball. Maybe he meant Cloyster there, but I guess there's also applies to Shelter. Is seen as nothing more than a black ball within a hard casing, and Michael has wondered what its biology is because most players don't understand where the organs are located. Bro, they're just wherever normal clams and oysters and whatnot keep their innards. I don't know where they keep them. I don't care, though. They're somewhere in there. However real bivalves work, that's how Cloyster works. I don't think it's that hard to understand. Cloyster is both peculiar in appearance and in biology. How is it weird in appearance? That's how clams work. There's like a little ball inside that's surrounded by a shell. How's that weird? Which is why it has been considered one of the weirdest water types in the franchise. By who else? Who else looks at Cloyster and thinks that is a weird Pokemon because it has a weird smirk? That's weird. Although granted, because of its general design, when I was a kid, I used to think that Cloyster evolved into Ghastly because in the Dex book, like the official Pokemon book that I had, I believe Cloyster and Ghastly were on the same page or like right next to each other or something. So like it kind of looked like the black hole inside kind of became Ghastly, and then Haunter and Gengar don't really look like Ghastly, so I just kind of assumed that it lost its shell and evolved into a Ghastly. I know better now, but like that, it's just a little side story that just kind of I don't know if they planned or meant for that to happen, but it's just very interesting that Cloyster could very easily be seen if put next to each other. If people didn't know anything about Pokemon and saw Shelter, Cloyster, and then Ghastly, they could easily see the through line of the black ball becoming Ghastly. But yeah, it's not Cloyster isn't weird. It just works like normal oysters, supposedly anyway. Number 1, Arctivish. One of the fossil Pokemon from Gen 8, who was specifically intended to look and be weird. They're made by a person that can't even match their socks. Like, their weirdness is very intentional. If anything, I would argue that Dracovish would be the weirder Pokemon to put on this list because of it if you're just going based on design. But let's see what he has to say about Arctivish. Arctivish is a fossil Pokemon that was introduced in Gen 8, and his body is difficult to describe because of how many different themes it has. I mean, not really. It's just like a fish, and it's like a weird... I think the back half is supposed to be like a weird frozen lizard, and then the top is a fish. It's just 2 things. So you complain if it's only based on one thing, and then you complain if it's based on like 2 or 3 things. That is weird. It seems to be some kind of prehistoric creature that is aquatic, and its physical makeup is very strange compared to most Pokemon, most fish Pokemon. So, within the lore of the games, because Karalis just kind of randomly fused these fossils together to spout out some abomination, the Pokedex entries are made kind of just looking at this thing and just kind of assuming what this thing would be like did it actually exist. The individual fossil pieces were actual Pokemon, but them fused together was never actually a Pokemon. So, for example, Dracovish, its Pokedex entry says that it can run at like 70 miles per hour on land, but it can't breathe, so it died out. Like, that is hilarious. And for Arctivish, it does have a mouth on the top of its head, but because of that, it can't really eat, because like it can see stuff in front of it, but it can't really get its mouth like in a position where it can actually eat something, so it just kind of died of starvation. It didn't actually die of starvation, but if this Pokemon did exist, the Pokedex just kind of assumed that's how it would have died out. All that being said, Arctivish has a mouth on its head, and it is believed to have gone extinct initially because it had trouble breathing. He got Pokedex entries of Dracovish and Arctivish mixed up. Like I already said, Arctivish does have a mouth on its head, but Dracovish is the one that had trouble breathing on land. Also, the fact that he says Arctivish has a mouth on its head, if he had said Arctivish has a mouth on the top of its head, that would have been weird. And I think he intended to say that, or that was at least the intention he was going for when saying this, but the way it reads right now is as if to say that every single Pokemon ever, like for example, Blastoise. Blastoise is a weird Pokemon because it has a mouth on its head. It has the same energy. Like, I don't think that's what he meant. I think he meant mouth on top of its head, but because he left out the word on top, his argument is way lessened. Not to mention the fact that he just got the Pokedex entries mixed up. Overall, it seems that it has a very weird biology that eventually caused it to die out completely in the oceans of the Pokemon world. I'm not upset that Dracovish specifically is on this list. It is a weird Pokemon, but that's intentional. So, and the fact that only Arctivish and not Dracovish is on this, I don't know. This entire list just kind of reeks of low effort, like even lower effort than the other 10 weirdest or 10 Pokemon that don't look like their type lists. At least those had a general through line. At least those, there seemed to be a point as to why he was making it. This one just kind of, every step, just kind of felt, I don't know, off. It didn't really feel like he made any points at any point throughout the entire article did he make a single argument. It was literally just, this is weird because it's weird. And some of the Pokemon that actually had a legit argument for, he just had like one minor thing and then moved on. So, anyway, do you guys think any of these Pokemon are actually weird, aside from Barbarico and Arctivish, who Arctivish is intentionally weird and Barbarico is just a bad Pokemon? Are there any other types that you think have a resounding amount of weird Pokemon? Do you hope that Michael keeps making articles like this? I certainly do. And with all that, I'll see you all next time.